Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin by expressing Council's apologies. We had a very long closed agenda. I know there's two people in the audience that don't even want to remember the long closed agendas when we're trying to get through our work and get out here for the 7 o'clock start. Our apologies for being late. I also want to acknowledge a number of things. First of all, I want to acknowledge some staff that have done some tremendous work in this room and in the committee room. Staff and contractor and people are here tonight monitoring the way in which this unfolds, because hopefully you'll hear us much better than you have in the past. For some of you, that's not a good thing. But for most of you, I think you'll be able to hear the meetings a bit better. We've changed the electronics here in this room. We've changed the at-home experience on the webcast, and with fingers crossed, we think it's going to be a much more engaging way to broadcast, webcast our council meetings, and we hope that citizens will appreciate being a little bit more connected to the work that goes on in this chamber and in our council committee room. I want to acknowledge all of the staff that were involved. I won't name them all, but I know our city clerk has been cracking a whip on this to make sure it all happened on time, and if anything goes wrong tonight, it's Jay's fault. That said, there's some recognition I'd like to read out very quickly because it's a preamble into the next, a segue into the next item. On behalf of the Partners for Climate Protection, this is a letter from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to Mayor Stewart and members of council. On behalf of the Partners for Climate Protection Program, PCP, I wish to congratulate the City of Coquitlam for achieving program milestones 2 and 3 for community greenhouse gas, GHG emissions, and milestones 2, 3, 4, and 5 for corporate GHG emissions. The community greenhouse gas reduction strategy prepared by this municipality, Coquitlam, sets a bold course forward, and we are pleased to share your achievement on the PCP website, fcm.ca/PCP. Your local government is also now among a unique and leading group of 30 municipalities. Among thousands of municipalities across Canada, we are among the leading group of 30 municipalities that have achieved the 5th milestone in the PCP framework, demonstrating clear leadership on energy and GHG emission management. I want to congratulate our staff and our council for the work, the discipline that it has taken to get to milestone 5, because we know that climate change is one of the results of human activities, and climate change has also created an increase in the frequency of extreme weather events. 10 days ago we saw an extreme weather event, and I'm going to turn to staff in a moment and ask them to please give a very quick update as to where we are, what transpired, and on Saturday, 11 days ago, but also to acknowledge the work that we've done as a council and as a city to do our part in trying to cut our greenhouse gas emissions and try to reduce the footprint of this municipality in a problem that should have everyone examining the way that they do business. So congratulations to all. I will now ask staff if they would please present very quickly an update on the storm that we just experienced. I got to experience it beginning with a tree falling in front of my car on Austin Avenue at about 1:30 that afternoon, and going on from there. And all through that weekend, I saw right through till 2 in the morning, city staff out there. I'm sure they were out there later than that, but I wasn't, trying to manage an enormously challenging day, an enormously challenging storm, keep our culverts operating, keep our pumps operating, pumping clean water and used water, and by and large, I think doing an excellent job. And on behalf of council, I will thank you in a moment, but first you'll tell us why.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and council. On On behalf of staff, I really appreciate this opportunity to provide you and the general public with a briefing what happened 10 days ago. During the weekend of August 29th and 30th, Saturday and Sunday, a series of severe rain and windstorm events resulted in fallen trees, power outages, traffic signal outages, and blocked lanes and roads. Fortunately for us, we had warning prior to the event, about 3 days in prior, so we had just enough time to let our developers, their contractors, know to get ready for the upcoming storm event. And we also, at staff level, made the necessary precautionary measures that included checking the catch basins, drainage inlets, creeks to make sure that everything was in order. Also, our equipment was ready for deployment by the time the storm came. We, of course, also made arrangements for additional staff availability as the need brought it. Saturday morning around 11 o'clock, the windstorm started. It went well over an hour in duration, and the highest speeds of the wind was in the vicinity of 100 kilometers per hour. So it was indeed a very, very significant event, and it resulted in broken trees and tree branches and subsequent power outages. Very interestingly, the number of calls coming in at a variety of channels was really, really high. In the Utility Control Center, which is the city's 24-hour, 7-day-a-week call line, over the first 24 hours, we received 615 calls from the general public, which way, way exceeds the normal volume, of course, especially during the weekends. The call numbers were also much higher at the fire department. During the first 24 hours, they had in excess of 100 calls, which is about 6 times their average daily call volume. The RCMP recorded 185 calls during the same period of time, but these calls were only police-related calls. They do not keep track of non-police-related calls. And let me use this opportunity on behalf of the RCMP and to a degree the fire department as well to mention that people really should not call the emergency 911 number inquiring from the police department when the power is going to get back. It seriously tied up the lines and created difficulties for the police department to handle the calls, the so-called legitimate calls, which required a response from them. According to BC Hydro, after the event, we obtained this number. They say that the power went out in our jurisdiction in the city of Coquitlam for 3,002 customers. Well, sure, those of us who were here, we thought that it was a lot more than just 3,000 customers. But nevertheless, that's their number. We have a number of signals, traffic signals, that went dark or switched to emergency battery operations. 60 of our 140 or so signals are equipped with battery power, so for a period of time we can operate them, and that's exactly what happened in many instances. Many of our sewer and water pump stations switched over to emergency generators, preventing flooding and water pressure issues. I believe everybody can understand that having been able to using emergency generators for pumping sewage is a really good thing, because if we couldn't do that, the consequences are really not that pleasant. But we managed to get through this without any significant problems. The fire department, in their response, they prioritized the calls, and they have high priority calls and lower priority calls, and they also had some calls which they didn't have to respond to. But generally, for the high priority calls during the first 4 hours of the event, they managed to respond within 30 to 60 minutes, and for the rest of the calls within about 90 minutes, which given the circumstances wasn't too bad. They, the fire department, police department, as well as our engineering department, we all brought in extra staff and not surprisingly, but interestingly enough, even bringing in our staff took a little bit of extra time because they also had to get through road blockages and whatnot. Overall, I think we managed to regain control over our assets and managed to do that. And once the windstorm and the response to the windstorm was over, then came the very heavy rainfall event, where in about 24 hours we received in Coquitlam on Burke Mountain just over 100 millimeters of rain, which is about the same as normally we would get in a month in August. So it was a tremendous amount of water, but fortunately, and with our staff day and night going and checking the inlets and culverts, we didn't have any substantial flooding issue. During the event and how we respond to this event, we learned a lot. And let me just highlight a couple of things here. Staff during the day, both Saturday and Sunday, and during the night, of course, we were communicating with each other, and I would rate it as it was good. Credit goes to the communications department as well for assisting us and providing public information through social media channels. We sent 4 or 5 situation reports, updates to council, and I have to mention that we also received feedback from council, from the mayor, from some of the councillors, which we followed up on, and some of them were very, very helpful, and I'll get there in a minute. BC Hydro's communications lines were also tied up. So people had generally difficulties to get to them, whether it was a phone call or email. Something went wrong in their system, and I think that's why, in part, the police and fire departments of ours received many calls which normally they shouldn't have had. Of course, we couldn't handle everything at once, but overall, I think we fared reasonably well. And I'd like to thank our residents who took up on cleaning up catch basins and look after our assets at the vicinity of their homes to prevent any significant damages. I'd like to mention for future reference, not that I'm aware of any issues now, but when we are talking about downed power lines, everybody has to be extremely careful and not to go close to the power line if they are down, because it can be a hazard to the persons, and of course we wouldn't want to do that. During the event and after the event, everybody in the city worked together very, very well. And as an example, we passed on among our departments and our workers various reports of hazard trees, so that, say, in case the Parks Department's tree crews could go and follow up and remedy the situation. We supplied a lot of traffic control equipment, pylons, barriers, whatnot, to the RCMP to deal with the traffic situation. The recovery from this event is to a degree still underway, obviously because it was a very significant event. But as Mayor Stewart suggested, and several councillors jumped in right away last weekend, staff made arrangements, so starting today, throughout the end of the week, our residents will have a unlimited green waste disposal opportunity. So today, on your regular day, if you took out unlimited quantities of green waste, then it should have been taken. I'd like to mention to our residents, though, that we would take this green waste only if it complies with the regular rules. In other words, no longer than 1 meter in length and about 3 inches in diameter for the branches, bundled up, or you put it in the green bins and then we are done. So that's what's yet to come for the balance of this week. Other than that, we just carry on at our end with the cleanup with extra hours for the street sweepers and similar. So that's pretty well my very brief summary of what happened and what's happening right now. And I have about 20 photographs typical of the event, which are on a timer, so 5 seconds each of the photos. So let me start this, and if you have questions in the meantime, I'll be happy to answer.
Before you start, the car in the foreground, actually, this is on LeBleu at 110 LeBleu. The car held 4 occupants when the tree landed on it. 4 adults. We're very, very lucky because right next to it, it would have been completely crushed. So there's some people that are very lucky, and we escaped significant injury throughout this. So go ahead.
Just lost it.
Rochester, yeah. That's the one that fell in front of me.
And I believe this is the last one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. And please pass on our thanks to your crews in engineering, and certainly they had to handle a good amount of the work, but also our thanks to our Coquitlam RCMP detachment. Coquitlam was actually one of the worst hit, but we, I think, had an excellent civic response to it. So the RCMP, Fire and Rescue, engineering, our parks crews, our facilities crews. Many of these crews had to leave their families at home in the dark because they came in and did the work that they needed to do on their days off on an emergency basis to keep the city running. Certainly the utilities, the crews that did the hydro reconnections and the various other utilities, our communications staff. I know one of our staff didn't have power of her own. In order to keep the city updated and keep the residents updated, she sat in her car with a converter so that she could keep tweeting and keep the social media messages that the city was sending out, keep them flowing. And finally, all the neighbors that help neighbors that help their senior neighbors, their neighbors with disabilities, just friends reaching out. Thank you all. This was an unusual circumstance by any measure, and I think Coquitlam showed what it's made of. Okay, now there's 2 others. I've been asked to take a moment to let residents know about an important tool that tells us how we should spend our tax dollars. Because, of course, that's Council's role, and we want your input. From September 1st to September 30th, all through the month of September, the Citizen Budget tool is available by visiting coquitlam.ca/budget. It allows you, our residents, to have your say about the budget from the comfort of your home or your office. It takes only about 15 minutes to complete the input document, and it provides really valuable feedback for Council. It helps inform council about our citizens' priorities and helps the city plan our budget for 2016. This is our 2nd year using Citizen Budget Tool, and we are looking forward to building on last year's success. So please be sure to check it out before September 30th. And the last one. There we are. Here we go. Sorry. I'm going to take a moment this evening to recognize the BC Community Achievement Awards. These awards are handed out annually by the British Columbia Achievement Foundation, a foundation established and endowed by the provincial government to celebrate excellence in the arts, humanities, enterprise, and community service. As such, joining us tonight are the two Coquitlam representatives to our provincial legislature, both of them former members of our city council. We have Councillor Linda Reamer, MLA for Port Moody Coquitlam, and sorry, I said councillor, but not councillor anymore, and Selena Robinson, the MLA for Coquitlam Millardville, a riding I know well. My own MLA. The BC Community Achievement Awards celebrate British Columbians who go above and beyond in their dedication and service to others, and who devote time and energy to making their communities more caring, dynamic, beautiful, healthy, and unique. They inspire others by their example. This year, there were 34 recipients of the award honored at a ceremony held at Government House in Victoria way back on April 24th. We previously highlighted a couple of the local winners back in June. That was Sandy Burpee and J. Reed Maxwell. We are proud to have our third local recipient, Dr. Tom Routledge, here this evening. I'd like to invite Dr. Routledge to the front of the room. I hope he was warned that he was going to be asked forward. Dr. Routledge is a forensic odontologist. While maintaining a full-time dental practice, he also volunteered to design, develop, implement, and maintain the province's dental database for the identification of human remains. The work of Dr. Routledge and his team was the first of its kind in Canada, and we cannot underestimate the value that it provides in giving closure and comfort to many families in BC, as well as being a valuable tool for law enforcement. So let's all give Dr. Routledge a big round of applause. Along with Sandy Burpee and J. Reed Maxwell, he is truly an outstanding Coquitlam resident. I have a certificate from a former MLA to present to you. He's not here tonight. And I believe we have perhaps both other MLAs will step forward and we'll And in the spirit of if you want something done, ask a busy man or a busy person, Councillor Wilson just reminded me that Dr. Routledge, better known as Tom in those circles, because Tom is a Operation Red Nose volunteer every year at the Christmas season. He helps drive people around so that the police don't have to identify anybody. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Outstanding to have you here tonight. I'm done. Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. The second item is a presentation from the Terry Fox Run Coquitlam. We have Marnie Green and Mark Pettie here to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart and councillors. My name is Marnie Green, and I'm a volunteer co-chair and run organizer of the Terry Fox Run in Coquitlam, along with my cohort, Mark Pettie. At first, I would like to thank all the councillors and the mayor for their ongoing participation and support of the Terry Fox Run over the past 6 years as we've built it from the ground up. Your participation in supporting through the Spirit grant helps us to pay for those things that can't be donated. Your participation on Facebook and social media to encourage and envelop our community helps to continue the powerful legacy of cancer research in our community. I'd also like to thank the city events coordinators who help us with the RCMP, auxiliary, the Blue Mountain Park maintenance, and of course all of our tennis courts and site setups. So as we send emails of all hours of the day and night, asking many questions, of which I have very few answers for, the city of Coquitlam has been very supportive of all of our questions and answers and continues to be one of our great community partners for this run. So I joined the Terry Fox run in Coquitlam about 5 years ago as a favor to help a friend out to organize and get some structure around the run to help. And I stayed because I've seen part of the community grow with part of our run over the past 5 and 6 years. I'm also staying because when I sit on our committee, I can look around and see the members on our committee, volunteers, who wear the red shirts on run day. And those are survivors of cancer, and those are survivors because money is raised through the Terry Fox Run, the Foundation, Cancer Research, and Treatment. So I like to remember that the run isn't competitive, so we ask families and friends to come and join us as we bike and run and stroll and roll and walk, of course, on September 20th at Blue Mountain Park. Our registration starts early in the morning, so we do have a fabulous pancake breakfast hosted by Hard Rock Cafe and some of our Coquitlam firefighters. We have coffee. And we have a lot of our local participants. Chapter 11 will come back and entertain and enjoy it and help us enjoy the day. We also have some Lindbergh Academy with some children coming out to do some great things and sing O Canada and Terry's songs. So we're really excited to have that community participation. So if I can ask for a few things. One is to help support the run as an ongoing through Facebook, social media posts. It helps gets our run out there for those who are really social media savvy and have jumped into complete digital age. We don't post a lot, so I won't become your worst nightmare. But we do post things about the run, about the where and the who and the how. And we like to share all of our race day, run day photos. So any of your photos we'd love to share and post and tag people in it, and it really helps that community sense of Coquitlam as the run. So before I hand it over quickly to Mark, I just wanted to tell you a quick story. This weekend, my 91-year-old mother-in-law had turned to me and said, "Are you guys going to support me in the Terry Fox run?" And I said, "Well, Miss Ella, I hope you know that I helped to organize the Coquitlam run." And she said, "Well, I don't run, I do little walks throughout the month and raise at our home." I said, "Well, that's great, that's wonderful." And I said, "Well, I'll make sure that I put a donation in on your behalf in Coquitlam." And she said, "No, you have to do it for me in Langley." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "Remember that woman? She always asks for the crackers at the next table. Well, she beat me last year. So I need to raise more money than she does." And I said, "All right, absolutely." So what I do ask is not that you help my 91-year-old mother-in-law raise, but I ask what friends and family you can bring to the run. So September 20th, Blue Mountain Park, 9:10 registration. Run kicks off about 10:15. Pancake breakfast starts at 10:30. I hope to see everyone there.
I won't take much of the time, but again, I'd like to thank the city of Coquitlam and all the councillors that definitely support Terry Fox. I know you all, realize the importance that Terry has on our community and the impact through what we did in April with the training run. I think the run has really, really grown in Coquitlam. If you go back over the last few years, we've gone from less than 100 people to 700. We raised, I think, $24,000 last year for cancer research. So I thank everybody for your support. really just spread the word. It's not a run. It's not a competitive event. Lots of people just show up and walk around the block. But it's really just to honor the legacy of Terry Fox. We always try to bring out speakers that have an impact. This year, we're bringing out an actual Terry Fox cancer researcher. So the recipient of the dollars that you help raise. So we hope that you'll come out and join us, rain or shine, and bring a friend and really help for an hour honor the legacy of Terry Fox. So thank you for your support.
Thank you both. I remember I was first elected, and for years we had always resisted having a Coquitlam run because we wanted to support the hometown run in Port Coquitlam, but I was first elected mayor, and the organizers came to me and said, we'd like a Coquitlam run, we're ready now. And some volunteers took up the challenge, and the challenge that both of you have now. Outstanding to see this level of enthusiasm for our hometown hero here, and I challenge you all to get out, and I challenge my colleagues to get out and
Bring a friend.
And bring a friend if you have one, and and let's really raise some awareness here in the 35th year. A tremendous organization, a tremendous cause. There's lots to be achieved. We're trying to raise $1 per resident. That's $141,000 this year, and that's combined with a lot of other folks, schools, and such. So we're doing what we can to really raise the profile of the run this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 3 concerns the minutes of the public hearing held Monday, July 27th, and recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Aspenson, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, July 27th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is minutes of the Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership meeting of Wednesday, May 27th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Aspenson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 is minutes of the Multiculturalism Advisory Committee meeting of Wednesday, July 15th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Chair Councillor Aspenson, second by Councillor Morrison. All in favor? Oops. You're up. Just push it once and there you go.
Okay, I just had a question about the staff report to council. I was just wondering, is that coming as a separate recommendation? On page 4, it says that there's a request for a formal report for the committee and council to be prepared by staff on I Love Canada Because. Is that a recommendation that's coming to council, or is that, how does that happen?
Okay. Sorry.
Page 4, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how that's getting to council and.
Yep. Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening. Perhaps if Councillor Aspenson may want to pitch into, is he's the chair of the committee. I wasn't at that meeting that night, but my understanding is there was a request placed to staff, and that work will be underway and to be reported back through the normal channels. I will talk with Steve Gawley, who's our liaison to that committee, just to confirm that. And if there's anything other than that, I will advise council. But perhaps Councillor Aspenson is the chair of the committee. If anything further, you can. Thank you.
Okay, just that it says that a formal report for the committee and council will be prepared by staff, and I just was wondering if that's a recommendation that needs to come for council, or we can just go ahead and ask staff to create reports, I guess is my question.
For the committee and council prepared by staff. So it's something to come to the committee about the mural idea and the other parts to it would take up some budget out of the community planning. Huh? Yeah. That's why.
Okay, and I gather the question is, we sometimes have the requests of staff to do work by committees, and is this one, I'm going to go to Mr. Steblin as to how we can distinguish between a request by committee for staff to engage in something where that requires a council motion, or in this case.
Yeah, the way I would interpret that is if the request entails a significant amount of work of staff and it adds to their work program in any kind of significant way, that should be captured in some kind of recommendation for staff to do that work. If it's very minor, then I think it would be okay simply to ask for an elaboration of the things in exactly the same way as a councillor may ask some staff for some information or the other. If it's minor, doesn't entail a lot of work, it's just pulling something together that's readily available, then I don't think you need a formal motion of council, but if it's a significant amount of work, I would recommend that be a motion. I do not know what was intended in this particular situation because it's not a formal request. I would interpret and ask Jim to clarify through to Steve that he should just go ahead and do it as long as it's a minor amount of work and just can be fit into his normal day.
Yeah, typically we use the phrase minor incremental work because it may have been something that staff were going to do already. I don't know that that's the case in this case, and I suspect we're going to, in approving the minutes, we haven't done anything other than approve the minutes. If in fact there is something that needs to come back to council, Mr. McIntyre can see that it gets brought back to council, I suspect. Mr. McIntyre?
Yes, thank you again, Your Worship. And that is true. There is some preparation that needs to be put in place in supporting the committee, and I know Steve and some of the other staff in that area are well prepared for the meetings. It's discussions with the chair and vice chair in advance, so everything's coordinated. There is some preparation work. I would suspect it's along that lines. He's just giving it some thought and some analysis and a discussion at one of the committee meetings. Coming out of that, if the committee is looking for anything substantive, that would then have to be part of a recommendation that would come before council.
Just this is a very minor.
If we just hold on a second, and I'll concur, and I thank Councillor Zerillo for bringing that up. We do need to have a formal request by council for significant incremental work. This is a formal report, and I'd actually be more comfortable if, in fact, there was if the minutes reflected a recommendation to council for council to ask staff to engage in the work, or at least an explanation that the work wasn't seen as particularly significant on an incremental basis, and therefore staff were already going to do it, or something like that. And I'm going to go to the chair now and ask for a settled.
I forget why Councillor O'Neill made this motion, because we did an I Love Canada mural for the Canada Day celebrations that happened previously this year. There were discussions about how to do things a little bit better and more for the next time, because the mural was very popular, because they just signed on their things why they love Canada. So I don't know and recall why Councillor O'Neill, but we had already done the work and we produced a mural in the last Canada Day celebration. So there is no real extra work or things as part of the existing program that we did. So I can't remember why he wanted to report on the I Love Canada. We were looking at some adjustments and tweaks, but there is no cost or anything. It's something that had been done this year already, and they were just looking to refine it for next year with some of the issues we came up that we ran out of space. We're looking for some different ways of doing it to create maybe another board behind it, because people really liked writing their thoughts on I Love Canada because.
In fact, I will take it one step further. The I Love Canada because also was I Love Coquitlam because at each one of those Park Spark events, and I'd love to see almost have communications develop the 6 or 7 themes of the comments, because while not many people said they love Coquitlam because of the mayor, there were stop it. There were some really creative things. You could tell the children were exploring why they love Coquitlam, and the adults were exploring why they love living in Coquitlam. And I think there's some real benefits to being able to assemble a little bit something that came out of the I Love Coquitlam thing, and for that matter, the I Love Canada thing, because so many of our residents here in Coquitlam have moved here from somewhere else. So many of our residents here from Coquitlam have moved into Canada from somewhere else. And so if there were a motion to do this, and it may come at a subsequent meeting, or it may even come now, I would support that.
I think when I read this more, I think he wants a report coming cataloging the 6 message themes that were present on the mural as a report to show what those messages were as why people loved Canada. I think that's what he's talking about in this report. It's not so much just breaking down the information there.
And a motion then would be to support the committee's request of staff. And clear that up. And I heard Councillor Reid moved that. Councillor Morrison seconded it. Is there any discussion on that?
Discussion.
Mr. Clerk, you feel awkward about this one?
No, not at all. I just point out that we have an existing motion on the floor and that this would be a subsequent motion. Yeah.
Got it.
Motion to receive.
This is still a motion to receive. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to receive? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I've accepted a motion from Councillor Reid to endorse the request by the committee of staff for a report related to I Love Canada, which I gather
That's what the
staff may well have already somewhat agreed to do that, but that is the motion, and seconded by Councillor Marsden. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Zurillo.
Yeah, I just want to say, if this had come at a recommendation at first, we could have a discussion about expanding it and doing that. So I guess, thank you for that, because it did, the words that jumped out at me were formal report and catalog, and I thought, okay, well, if this is going to be a real project, then let's really discuss it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the motion to ratify? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 7, concerns the minutes of the Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, July 28th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor Reid. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now, I just realized how bewildered council is, because on their desk when they came in today was a nut, an acorn. The acorn actually is from the oak tree that fell in Mackin Park. So I'd urge you all to take it home and plant it, and let's see if we can replace that oak tree. There you go. Now you can plant it on your patio. Oak trees on patios don't do as well, though. There you go, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item, item 8, concerns a development variance permit authorization for a proposed triplex development at 718 Morrison Avenue. But prior to reading the staff recommendation, I would request the Mayor to call for speakers.
The development variance permit, we have a mini public hearing. Are there any speakers to this item that have come out to want to express their opinion on this item to council? Any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to this item the final time? Seeing none, I'll close that. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that council approve the signing and sealing of the development variance permit for 718 Morrison Avenue. The Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it.
Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Towner. Councillor Zurillo.
I remember when this one did come up, and I think everyone was excited to think that this property would have a new life. My concern is with the last, on page 3, the related to variance number 4, detached dwellings and enclosed parking garage. And the report talks about the fact that if the two new dwellings were joined together, that we wouldn't have to go for the variance. And the reasoning for going for the variance is that the separation between houses makes it more desirable housing product for prospective purchasers. And I understand that, and I think that that's wonderful, that people want to get the most value out of their land, they should. but I think we have a duty to accommodate our bylaws for the neighboring properties, and I would prefer that this came back. The other variances I'm okay with, but this one, I think if we can accommodate with a joined duplex rather than two separate buildings, that we should, out of respect for the bylaw and out of respect for the neighbors, that we should do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have a different concern here, and I hinted at it when we gave readings to this item. It frustrates me when we have a property owner that perhaps where the neighbors would prefer to see a redevelopment of the site rather than the existing mess. In some circumstances, the houses are not kept up to the standard of the neighborhood, or they don't meet the property kind of maintenance standards that we as a community try to enforce. And as a result, we might end up with less input, might end up with fewer people coming to speak about the redevelopment proposal because they feel that anything would be better than what they live next to. And I expressed concern about this particular property because of the lack of maintenance that had taken place. And I would love to see us adopt a strategy where before we even accept an application, the house be brought up to, the existing property be brought up to some level of maintenance so that the neighborhood doesn't have to choose between a redevelopment that they disagree with and the existing condition that they disagree with more. That said, I supported the rezoning, and I'll support the variances. Councillor Reid.
I will not support this. We went through this before, and I think I've been very plain with staff that when we put rules and regulations and setbacks in place, they're supposed to be the rules. And every development that comes before us for another variance, it just thwarts the rules. And people in a neighborhood have a right to know that the house next door to them will be built X number of dollars from their house, and that their front will match the other house. And I realize when we're going through something like this in redevelopment areas that there are a lot of homes that, you know, don't meet the existing bylaws. Excuse me?
Sorry, I'd ask a question. Sorry.
Oh,
I apologize.
sorry. So this one has 4 variances, and I think we went through some of these last time it was here. And I don't know whether what Councillor Zerillo had to say about putting the 2 together was one or not. But there's just too many variances here. I've said before, these are only 3 buildings on this lot. But when we have developers coming forward trying to squeeze 7 units or something onto a piece of property that by right should only have 6 so that they can comply with all the setbacks that we put in, I want to see the 6. I don't want to live in a community that everything's jammed on and living so close to each other that it ruins the neighborhood. So I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. I've been on the record as saying I'm not a fan of variances in greenfield developments, but this is obviously an existing area that when I look at these variants that are requested, variance 1 relates to improvements in their intermodal transportation, so ensuring that the road has sufficient width for bike routes, bike paths, etc. So I think that's a variance to me that makes good sense. It encourages the type of behavior that we want to see. The remaining variances that are requested, 2 of them are a 10 centimeter variance. So we're dealing with a very, very small amount. And these are all internal within the lines. This isn't how close the property is located to its neighbors. It's not infringing on the side setbacks in terms of getting too close to the neighboring properties. So in this particular instance, making these exceptions and granting these variances does make sense to me. I especially like the piece with regards to the intermodal transit or transportation variance. So I will support these variances and ask that this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My new board here, and it looks like I don't have any other speakers, but I'm not certain.
You're good.
Good. All right. The motion before us is a DVP. All in favor? Opposed? Councilors Cirillo and Reid are opposed. The motion carries.
Next item, item 9, is a zoning amendment bylaw 4577 for a proposed subdivision at 941 and 945 Stewart Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4577 and that bylaw 4577 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councilor Asmussen, seconded by Councilor Reid. Councilor Zarilla.
I just had a question before this goes to public hearing about the lots. So is it possible, it says each lot can have a carriage house or a secondary suite. So we've got, I'm looking at attachment 3. We've got 2 that will be a single family with a secondary suite, and the one in the middle that will be a single family with a carriage house. Is it possible for these to be duplexes? Could we have 6 duplexes here? Just a question. I'm just wondering.
It couldn't be 6 duplexes. You mean 3 duplexes?
Sorry,
or 6
3
units.
duplexes. Well, 6 single
6 units,
family.
6 units in 3 duplex.
Thank you.
Okay, got it. Mr. McIntyre, or no? They're all flipping a coin here.
Through your worship, to Councillor Zarrillo, I think you'd be running up against the minimum lot size requirements. So what's being proposed here is what's allowed under the zone, or proposed zone.
So how far are we off of the minimum lot size for a duplex?
Your worship, I'll check the bylaw, but basically with the RT1 zone, and it's one of the corresponding zones, the neighborhood attached residential OCP designation. But under that, and we've seen a number of applications come forward to council in recent months whereby it may be going to an RT1 rezoning, but based on the lot size and site circumstance, it may be going to a narrow lot subdivision. That's what's happening in this case. And so what we're just trying to flag for council under that approach to the RT1, that's based on a certain lot width and area. Under that, it would be a single family with the option to have either a secondary suite or a carriage house. In this case here, they've chosen to go with those subdivisions, and in 2 of the lots, it appears that they're looking at secondary suites, and one they're looking at a carriage house.
So for when this comes to public hearing, I would like to understand how far off these are on lot size to do that.
And if I could, Your Worship, I think Carl has that information, just head checking the bylaw here.
Yeah, in the RT1 zone for 2-family residential or a duplex, it's 740 square meters. So it's quite a bit larger than what's being proposed, those 3 lots, which are 453 each.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is first reading of a zoning amendment and subdivision. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll have a public hearing on that. Mr. Clerk, I will, my wife and I own a property about 3 houses. Next one? Where are you? Oops. I flipped pages 1 too soon. Thank you. Yes, appreciate it. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item, item 10, is a zoning bylaw text amendment. This is bylaw 4587 to amend the building size regulations in the RS1, RS3, RS6, RT1, and RT3 zones. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4587, and the bylaw number 4587 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Morrison. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. One of the things we discussed at some time with respect to the large homes was putting a covenant on title. And when the homes, as far as I'm concerned, reach over 3,500 square feet or something, there should be a covenant on title that they can only have one suite, even though that's all anyone's supposed to have. When you start getting the 8,000 and 10,000 square foot homes, some builders are building and one for the nanny and one for the grandpa and 2 to rent, and you're ending up with 3 and 4 suites in one house. And so I would like to hear that addressed at the public hearing. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, thank you. And I too recall that idea's been raised on occasion, so fair enough. Good question. Let us take that away, and as we often do, we'll have a look at it and we'll incorporate that into the public hearing brief to give some background and maybe some options for council on that point.
Thank you. Councillor Zerillo.
Mine was 2 points. First of all was it seems like this amendment is actually making the houses potentially bigger. They can have more jet outs. And maybe that's the way I'm interpreting it incorrectly. But so it comes to my second point, which is if we advertise this in the paper, which we will, could we have some graphics that are more layperson that people can understand exactly what this is proposing? Because even though I've gone through multiple presentations, I still find it difficult to understand exactly what the bylaw changes are. So I think we need some easier pictures. And is it true that this is actually allowing houses to have jet outs that could actually be even larger? I know it doesn't make the home necessarily larger, but if you're allowing jet outs for a dining room or a bay window or that sort of stuff, this seems to accommodate that.
Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, I'll turn that over to Jim Bontempo, our building permits division manager, who's much more the expert on those technicalities than I am. But we did recognize that this is can be a very complex area, particularly you get into the tweaking that we're recommending here. We were intending to have a more straightforward, explanatory presentation to the public hearing, so that's something we'll work on to pull that package together. The question about does it add to building size, that would be contrary to what we're trying to achieve. I'll let Jim speak to that if I could.
Turning over to the expert on this issue, Mr. Bontempo.
Thank you, Your Worship. The regulations really were plugging loopholes that designers were finding in order to create that larger massing and to remove some of the articulation. So what we're doing is finding ways to encourage designers that articulate that outermost building face and force that portion of the building back so that it does meet that 45 rule. I know it's difficult to visualize, but what we're essentially doing is finding something that designers and applicants have skirted around and found a way to encourage them to move that building face back. Now, there's other portions of the proposed amendments that prohibit some of the massing and size of the buildings. For example, we talked about on the larger, steeper slopes. Currently, applicants are able to reach 3 stories on the downhill side, and with the proposed amendments, you will no longer be able to reach 3 stories. You'll be able to reach 3 stories, but the 3rd floor will have to be pushed back. So there's all sorts of little changes in there that tweak and push the building back and force designers to articulate that building mass. And we will be preparing almost a handbook or a series of graphics that are going to be available at our front counter for all to be able to take away and look at, and maybe some of those graphics can be ready for the public hearing.
That'd be great, because my interpretation was that the articulations are actually infringing on some of the setbacks, and that's where I was concerned, because the way I was reading it was there was an opportunity for an articulation to infringe on the setback. If it wasn't on the ground, if it was above ground, it's an articulation that could infringe on the setback.
Mr. Bontempo.
Yes, through the chair. Keeping in mind that at no time can any of the proposed building mass sit outside of the building envelope at any time. The only time you can have a portion of the building sit outside of the building envelope that is established by setbacks is through what's called a siting exception. And that's only available to things like bay windows and hutches, and things like roof overhangs, which all have about a 0.6 meter siting exception. Those are tightly regulated, and but the building face of the building at no time can approach closer than 1.8 meters on the side yard and so forth on your front and rear yards.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just like to speak to Councillor Zerlo's proposal with regard to the advertisement that would go in the paper. Given the type of text amendment, given the size of the previous report to this and the report itself, it'd be very difficult to have layman drawings, for example, without appropriate context that would guide a reader of that advertisement or public notice. What we do say in our ads and what we do recommend is that people who have concerns, that they speak to the file manager, that the city staff are available to respond to questions, and that city staff would be able to navigate them through some of the more technical details in the narrative that Mr. Bontempo just described. So I really think the purpose of the ad is to get someone to speak to an expert. It'd be very difficult for the ad to provide those nuances in a quarter of a page or something like that. A drawing couldn't be self-explanatory in that sense.
So you don't think a drawing could adequately explain paragraph II, those parts of the building that extend beyond a plane formed by the lines projecting inward at an angle of 45 degrees from the vertical at the respective permitted average perimeter wall heights as measured from a grade along the lines of the outermost building faces will be considered in the determination of average perimeter wall height, gable ends, dormers, and those parts of the building wall identified in subsection.
What?
You don't think you could draw that?
What I'm saying is the great challenge of the clerk's office is to translate planning speak into public digestible content.
I think we need some roll aids here.
And I'm not going to turn around and see my esteemed colleagues.
So, then I would have one more question.
Mr. McIntyre, and then back to you.
Yes, thank you, Worship. And please don't read that again. I lose track by the end of the first line. Again, no, it's very clear that there's a need for some very straightforward, understandable graphics. We've tried to do that through this process as we've looked at options over the past number of months. I think Jim's done a very good job in illustrating that and speaking to that. So we'll follow on that vein at the public hearing to make it very, very clear and understandable what's being proposed here.
Councillor Zarella.
So perhaps just the title in the advertisement could be something other than just zoning bylaw, text amendment, blah, blah, blah. Like we could have a title that kind of gives a hint of what it's about.
Something that captures that paragraph I read.
Sure. The title, the majority of the public hearing ad will capture a bit of what is expressed in the report purpose on page 1. So we'll talk about how the maximum permitted perimeter wall height and wall area are administered and talk about reducing building mass. And it's really within that type of overarching content that then we'll say if you have more specific questions to speak to one of the experts in planning, because I think if you start to change the titling, you get into some challenges about what type of nuance or what type of, and we try not to use this, so I'll use the word, what type of spin you're putting on whatever's coming forward. So we really try to stay technical where necessary to keep us on side, and then we really try to use easier digestible language so that the public understands what is being proposed. So that's a bit of the balance, and we hope we meet it most of the time.
Councillor Reid.
In order to move this along, could we just have large homes review somewhere in the public hearing? Because under background, it says the city has undertaken the large homes review, and this is the purpose of the zoning amendment bylaw. So if we could have large homes review, people will get it, and those people interested in that subject will come out.
What we'll do is we'll put that in the more textual portion rather than the titling portion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would find it awkward if it were in the title, because this doesn't necessarily flow out of the large home review as much as it flows out of a loophole that has been identified by staff. The large homes review produced a result that council determined was a minor tweaking of the existing bylaw, not all of us, but and this is one of the minor tweaks, rather than, I don't want to lead anyone to believe that this will solve the issues associated with that great big house across the street from them. This solves a very small issue.
At least it lets them know we're talking about that subject at this public hearing.
I agree, and so it'll be added to the text, but not so much to the title then as what I understood from the clerk. Councillor Wilson.
I'm glad Councillors Zarillo and Reid brought this up, because I think, you know, we need to make our advertising as clear as we can to, if we're going to have any chance of engaging people. So I understand that the title can't maybe be as plain language, but I agree. We just need to make sure people understand what's going on so that they can have some input. Thank you.
And this will probably generate a front page article in the local papers, so that'll help. Yes. Oh. Okay. Motion on the floor. I see no other speakers. All in favor of first reading and a public hearing? Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And now, Mr. Clerk, my wife and I own a piece of property about 3 houses from this. We have nothing to do with this particular property and would gain no financial interest, but out of an abundance of precaution, I will absent myself from this item both now and if it goes to public hearing. Acting Mayor now is Councillor Towner.
Madam Chair, item 11 is the zoning amendment bylaw 4588 for proposed duplex at 1016 Quad Lane Avenue. Staff recommendation is that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4588 and the bylaw number 4588 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Zarillo, second by Councillor Reid. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will go collect Mayor Stewart at this time.
Well, now I know who's slowing down the agenda.
You.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next item, item 12, is proposed official community plan amendment for 97 Braid Street, Sapperton Green in New Westminster. Staff recommendations that council express concerns to New Westminster regarding the potential future transportation impacts associated with the proposed Sapperton Green development, and that the related official community plan amendment and development occurring on the site be deferred until viable solutions to the wider transportation network challenges, including improvements to the Brunette interchange, are resolved in consultation with Coquitlam, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, TransLink, and other relevant stakeholders. 2, the council requests that New Westminster consult with Coquitlam regarding transportation and other applicable items prior to proceeding with the official community plan amendment process. And 3, the staff be directed to forward a copy of this report to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure and TransLink.
Moved by Councillor Towner, seconded by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much. I want to thank staff for a very good report on this issue and the concerns that they raised that we have had when we had the report before us, we talked about this. As a person who works for Trans and the bus, using the entrance lane, as you highlighted, would create tremendous backlogs in time. There's tremendous problems right now with traffic, as we all know, getting over the Brunette overpass in through New West. And to see what they're doing here seems to be not any concern about regional transportation that may affect their city, but the city is growing in New West, putting up high-rises and bringing more people to it and more people needing to leave and come to it. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to restrict the traffic motion as what is noted here in the report. I do think, so, that I'm disappointed that this is not just New Westminster, but other cities on boundary roads, connecting roads, that we seem to have a disconnect of cities thinking that, well, we'll grow, but we don't want that traffic coming from that municipality, so we're not going to make the road meet up exactly that way. We're going to do other things to frustrate it. We've seen it happening more and more often now, and I think through to the Minister Fassbender and Minister Stone, the provincial government, I think when we look at the TransLink governance, presently there's a clause in the TransLink governance that says the affected municipality doesn't agree, it doesn't go ahead. And we've had that problem with New Westminster on the Brunette overpass, the only overpass in the whole Gateway project on the Highway 1 that has not been done with that. We've had our issues with the Bailey Bridge. We had to go to the province. We've had the issues on other areas also. So I think what needs to be done is that needs to be removed, that they must think regionally, and that while they must work with the municipality to reduce the impacts, that a municipality does not have the right to block the progress of transportation through the region. And the people in TransLink should think solely on a regional transportation need network. So I'd also like to look at, for the provincial government, Mr. Stone, that there is a better provincial way of approving or not approving boundary road connecting municipal roads throughout the province that don't make sense on a traffic and transportation network. I think our citizens of the whole region here require sensible, sound transportation, not cities playing, I'm going to not let your traffic through my area, but I'm going to let my traffic go through your area, or your traffic should go here. And this is starting to happen too often in the region now, and we need some oversight and guidance and some rules to abut that. So I want to thank staff for the report on this. My concerns that New West will not agree to this and continue to move this direction, which will exacerbate a problem between Coquitlam and New West and our ability to get to a hospital, which is the major trauma hospital for the state. And I know Mayor Stewart, and we've all spoken about that a number of times, getting to New Westminster. But it's just not New Westminster. There's other cities and other issues going out throughout the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
I concur with Councillor Asmussen's comments, so I will direct mine to the other issue. A couple of years ago, we had a developer come forward and talk about what we call the Crane site. That's C-R-A-N-E, and it's the last site just leaving Coquitlam, going into New Westminster, virtually under the overpass is where it starts and goes along adjacent to the Brunette River. And we had staff do a lot of work on that site. We have had multiple inquiries on that site through the last few years. And whenever we addressed it, we were caught with New Westminster on the traffic issue. And being a good neighbor, we certainly understood that they didn't want 4 lanes of traffic going from North Road through past Hume Park and ruining their downtown Sapperton, which is just a gorgeous little district, and going right through into Royal Columbian Hospital. They didn't want truck traffic or more traffic, or where would our kids go to school, because the school that was closest was in New Westminster, and they didn't want that to happen. So at that time, I remember that we suggested to them that perhaps we could have an alternate route which went across the Brunette River and would have either skirted this, I can't tell exactly from their map, It either would have skirted the periphery of this or gone somewhere around it or through it, and it would have provided an access for both the new development that they have now put in front of us and also the Crane development, so that we wouldn't have such a large increase of traffic going up past Hume Park and to Royal Columbian. And that was just an absolute no. They would not entertain that. They would not look at it. They didn't want to do it. We thought that it just didn't make any sense until this had an opportunity to be looked at by a future council at that time, a future council in New West, and their staff, and I believe they were about to get a new city manager, were they not? And then that was going to go and be one of the issues that was looked at. So what we did as a good neighbor, I feel we're being quite slighted now because they have given us no opportunity to develop the Crane lands. So basically we have lands that are just stuck unless we want to be a really nasty neighbor and develop and have property going along Columbia Street. And that is not how I like to cooperate. And in the regional growth strategy, which we, this council, had lots to say about, and we went through and we were trying to be someone that we listened, we compromised, and we got through it. And now this comes forward to us, and I think it's a lovely plan. I enjoyed reading through it. But there's nothing for us. And all I wanted was an access route. And for them, with the situation that it is at Brunette and Braid, I think another emergency exit would be great for them. So I have a problem with this, and that is the reason. I think if we don't start playing good neighbors in this lower mainland, we're all going to be nowhere fast and sitting in our cars idling. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I was just a little bit surprised at the summary of correspondence that they received after their efforts to go out to consultation a year ago. The City of Coquitlam had said, the City of Coquitlam has acknowledged receipt, had questions related to the transportation review of the proposed development, and has not provided any further comments. Well, we sent a whole letter to them with 3 points. One of those points highlighted a number of concerns. So if that's how they're going to interpret feedback, it's a little frustrating. So I know at the time I talked about how we need to try to be good neighbors here. We have to try to work something out. But for them to sort of synthesize it down into one sentence, I thought was a little bit disrespectful. That's all.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments of my own. We have heard from neighbors about developments in Coquitlam, and we but we sometimes comment about developments in other communities. We had one recent example where a border street or a intermunicipal roadway was characterized as something that one neighbor would simply, we will make the decisions that are best for our community, full stop. We will not what's best for the region. And I think if 22 municipalities do that, we won't be a livable region. This federation that is called Metro Vancouver will not work if 22 municipalities behave parochially. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment on this one. Councillor Reid mentioned an example, the Crane site. I believe the Crane site, one of the proposals was envisioned around Garrett Street, which is, I think, one of the side-to-side roadways in Sapperton. Garrett Street would be continued across the industrial property and into the Crane site, and would offer that second route of exit. And of course, Westminster has long said that they will not add any lanes voluntarily that connect their community with the neighboring communities, no matter what, unless, of course, we get an arbitration award or something like that. So that's why we still have the 4 lanes across the freeway that were there when I was a child. When I was a young child 34 years ago. 55 years ago, there were 55 years ago there were 4 lanes connecting New Westminster and Coquitlam across the freeway, and it's the same 4 lanes now. Our respective communities have doubled in population, more than doubled in population, and we still have those same 4 lanes. During the recent power failures associated with the windstorm, we got to see an example of when, even if you were in an ambulance, there was no way you could get to our regional hospital during certain hours of those days because the traffic lights were down and there was no connection, there was no relief valve possible. We've seen other examples when a car accident on the overpass or a car accident on North Road simply shuts down the access that Coquitlam doesn't have very good access, but it shuts it down to our regional hospital. And so I'm going to suggest as well that we add to recommendation number 3, first of all, that we include the minister responsible for TransLink. We've copied TransLink, but we should copy Minister Fassbender, who is responsible for trying to make TransLink a regional transportation authority. But I'd also ask that I would entertain a motion that we add minister responsible for TransLink and the Minister of Health to recommendation 3. Sorry, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure is already there.
Okay.
Yep. So I've taken the motion from Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. That's a motion to amend. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of that? Opposed? Carried unanimously. The motion as the recommendations as amended. I see no other speakers. I want us to work together as communities, and I think we should extend the olive branch and try one more time to ask New Westminster to please consult properly with its neighbors about the connections that we have to have between our 2 communities to make it work. Councillor Morrison.
I appreciate from Councillor Reid the history with the Crane site and its proximity to this. I think it's a prime opportunity to open up this channel of dialogue. What struck me most through this report, and again I thank staff for this, is on page 3. The proposed amendments for the entire is premature, and that's really it. I think our messaging back through our friends in New Westminster should be like, you know what, this appears to fit the Metro Van's regional growth strategy. That's great. Looks like a great development. It's just not ready for it, and the road system's not ready for it, and we need them at the table to help develop the road system that projects of this magnitude need. I am not a big fan of taking industrial lands out and building straight residential, but this is general urban. It's mixed use. There's lots of opportunity here. So I think from a positive perspective, we can say to them, very happy to entertain dialogue with you on what we can do here, but you've got to be at the table for the greater need of the regional transportation. And on page 2, where they speak to removing Braid Street from municipal truck routes, there's just so many challenges here with the movement of goods and services. North Fraser Perimeter Road, there's a larger solution that needs to be brought into the mix in this. So I firmly support the modifications taken and to move forward. But again, let our friends in New West know that we're open to it. Timing's just not right.
Councillor Zrillo.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. I'm comfortable with the recommendations 1, 2, 3 and the changes we made to 3. I'm not comfortable with the additions, any further additions that Councillor Marston just talked about. It's too soon, or we're not ready. I'd rather not be in the letter. So is that going to be in the letter? Okay. Just want to make sure.
No, the discussion around the table, if it appears in print, it will be in minutes, but not in the correspondence will reflect the motion in the report.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Clerk.
Yeah, just to confirm that the letter is basically a letter of transmittal, but the quotation of premature is in the report, and that will thus be conveyed via the report, but not in the letter itself.
Yeah, the recommendation number 3 is that we share the report well, for that matter, all the recommendations would share the report with Westminster and with other agencies. The report contains the language. Okay. No other speakers. The motion is amended. So the amended motion is on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 13, concerns the Mundy Park Riverview Forest off-road cycling trail improvements. The staff recommendations that council authorize staff to initiate planning to complete trail improvements in Riverview Forest as part of Phase 3 of the Mundy Park Riverview Forest off-road cycling facilities project as per the report. Include this project as a B priority in the 2016 business plan and direct staff to consult with the public and the Tri-Cities Off-Road Cycling Association on this project and present a final design and budget for council consideration once complete.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor Towner. I want to acknowledge the Torca Tri-Cities Off-Road Cycling Association that appeared before our committee today and who's in the audience, represented in the audience this evening as well. Good to have you out. Good to have the commitment of the work that you're asking to undertake with us. So I've got speaking order of Councillor Reid, Marsden, Zarello. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Item number 2, where we're going to include this project as a B priority. Sometimes Bs get way down the list because you got so many As. My question is, because of the consultation that we had this afternoon with the group Torca and their enthusiasm for helping staff and getting underway, is there any way that they can be starting work sort of immediately and moving on so that this B might just creep up to an A.5 and get done in time for, you know, the spring season for all the things that they're going to do? I realize that you have lots of priorities, but when we have a group that is so excited about joining us and helping us out, I like to encourage it.
Yes, Your Worship.
Mr. Alawewa.
If I can, this is a little bit unique because, as you know, it's actually 2007. It's an extension of a 2007 project, so it's a multiple phase project, and so we're trying to catch up, and because of that, we are initiating work in the fall here. We're going to start the project, even though some of the work is going to obviously creep into the 2016 business plan, and we didn't want that to not be understood by council, that, you know, a fair bit of the work will go into next year, and it is a project that we are advancing. We feel a B priority is appropriate. You know, we've got some major projects, the Smiling Creek School, Rochester, you know, the YMCA. These are A priorities, and obviously this is an important project, but we are trying to put it in its priority. But we are initiating, as the report indicates, we do want to start and get a bit of a leg up. We are working with Torca. We have existing funding, so typically when we build something into a council priority, we also seek funding. In this case, we have the funding, so we have the ability to start doing some of the planning work with that group in a measured way, and some of the consultation that will lead us to the eventual plan. So the answer is yes, although this will obviously still be part of our business plan 2016.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. My concerns were very similar to Councillor Reid's. Typically, in looking at the business plan priorities, we look at them as a full package and say, these are the A's, these are the B's, these are C's. And so to look at them in advance and say, this is a B, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that because, again, given what's been done and the great presentation we saw today, maybe this does bump up. Maybe in council's mind, this does come forward as an A. So I'd be more comfortable if we were to defer the second recommendation until the completion of the full business planning cycle and ensure that it be addressed appropriately. Fully support moving forward with the other recommendations, but that particular one, so whether it be appropriate to move separation of it.
I'm almost tempted to suggest that we leave it as a B until we decide to change it. Mr. Alawewa.
If I can, I think the wording actually, we typically note this kind of a resolution would be include this project as a B priority for consideration by council in the 2016 business plan. What that means is that we bring it forward in the business plan discussions at that point as a B, but council can actually move it into an A if they want to bump an A back. So if I can suggest, whatever direction council wants to take, but we could add simply the wording as a B priority for consideration by council in the 2016 business plan that would put it on the table at the business plan discussions, and then the council could move it wherever they'd like it to be.
I'd be comfortable there. My key is I don't want to stop the work that's going forward this year, and I just want to ensure that we're not tying hands by saying next year it's a B when, you know, maybe we get enough progress through the balance of this year that it can be bumped up into A category. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, given that that's an amendment or suggestion of clarity, it could be considered as a friendly if it fits within the context of what has already been moved.
Yeah, I don't see a change that would require an amendment. Okay, and I think Councillor Reid wants to make it a B+ priority, but
I'm going to make it A+.
A-. Okay, thank you, Councillor Zerillo.
I just wanted to clarify this through the chair. This is a $45,000 project, correct? There's $45,000 left in the pot.
Yes, there's a $45,000 budget, and we intend to be within that budget, and that's what we've indicated in the report. We can also work with the volunteer groups that can assist us. So that is our goal.
So I'm not so concerned about whether it's an A, B, or C, because as Mr. Seblin often says, just because it's a C or a B doesn't mean you're not working on it. So I'm totally comfortable with that. My question is, through the chair, what is the membership numbers for TORCA? So it's 250 members. Today we had a presentation for Mr. Nash, and I noticed that Mr. Nash I wasn't sure through the presentation if he was representing Giant or if he was representing TORCA, but I just want to be sure that we do include maybe some of our other cycle stores in the area, like that we don't limit our consultation to just TORCA. I want to make sure that we do expand out. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't know about TORCA that would still like to ride the bikes.
Well, absolutely, and the resolution is to consult with the public as well as TORCA. We do want to go wider, but clearly TORCA is well organized, and they have a good membership, and are very knowledgeable in the field, and they can be some real assets to us. But no, the intent is to consult widely, including the public.
And I saw that of the public, but I'm just wondering if there should be other businesses that are involved. If Giant has representation, that perhaps other retailers or other manufacturers should have representation as well. That's just my my thoughts from earlier this morning. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I'm also very supportive of this project, and I guess you know, the presentation we had earlier today, where the association offered to be very involved in refining the trails and improving them and all that sort of thing. I mean, I really hope we take them up on their offer for two reasons. One, if it cost us $155,000 to build the two skills parks, I'm a little leery that we can do this for $45,000. And two, they're experts, and they know what people want. So I really hope that we incorporate them in the work, not just in the design and the consultation. And I'm convinced that we'll also make it go faster and a lot more efficient with our dollars. Is that a commitment?
Yes, we are committed to working with TORCA. You know, the extent we'll see how the design process goes when we complete the consultation, and then there'll be a design and construction. We'll see how we can best use both their resources, their cooperation, potentially their guidance, and even labor. Would be more volunteer type of support. But there's a number of ways that they can be involved, and we certainly like groups of that stature and organization to help us. We are aware of agreements that TORCA has with other municipalities for maintaining of trails, and so we're looking into what some of those would mean, but we're certainly open to that. And we certainly know it's not just in terms of community capacity, but it's a resource that we can use, and we'll certainly need that if we're going to do something meaningful here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to, the answer that came from Torca actually came from Ken Porter. Ken Porter was referred by Paul Nash, referred to him as one of the really strong driving forces behind Torca, and I really appreciate it. He's also a local teacher, and he and others from Torca took me on a tour several months ago of the Riverview Forest, and really showed me what their vision was, and it was a passionate vision. I think there's a vision that said, please let us do this. Please let us get out there and actually build some. So following along Councillor Wilson's comments, I really hope we bring them in, we let them put their tools to work, and I'd rather us simply hand the whole thing over to them than the alternative, which I suspect is not including them in any significant way. I really want to see them included. I want to see as many of the cycling organizations as possible. Torca recently had a fundraiser that I attended, and there was everybody, every company was represented in the door prizes and there's lots of corporate involvement, lots of community involvement, and literally hundreds of people, an overflow crowd standing remotely in milestones. It showed the level of support for off-road cycling, and I think level of support that is still in its infancy to some degree. We can do so much more, and I really appreciate Mr. Porter's attendance here. Councillor Asmussen, if you'd like to borrow my bike, Councillor Reid, please feel free. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. I think as I spoke at committee this day, I support this. I think Torca is very pleased that this is here, that this is moving forward for the Riverview Forest Park. I think as Councillor Zerl took what I was going to say also is that from Mr. Steblin, if we make everything an A priority, there is no priorities. And I think it's more semantics about moving this from an A to a B, from a B to an A. I think that if you look at a report on our business plan, you find that almost all the A's done or almost all the B's are done within that year. So I think also on page 4 of the report, staff has clearly outlined that they want to meet with Torca. They want to do a full technical review and consultation, and staff will bring forward a final project scope and design to council to confirm the required project budget. So depending on what they get in that technical analysis, and I think, Mr. Alahueva, you said that would be done this fall. So we could probably expect the report in the early new year, January to February.
Generally, I'm looking over at Michelle, who's going to be running the project. But yes, generally, it'll be probably, I expect, early next year. Could be late this year. It really depends on how it goes, but probably early next year.
I'm looking forward to seeing that report with the consultation with Torca, and if there's any other association that want to weigh in and consult with them, and then see your final report, and then make our decision. If you show us the options, and if we decide that these options require more funding, then to make that decision at that time. I'm looking forward to this, but I don't think at this time, changing this from a B priority to an A priority, I don't see any reason for doing that, any need to do that, until we get the report back. And we have the funding in place, and like you said, normally your priorities come with asking for funding it beforehand. This is already there. So I'm looking forward to that report, and that I hope for a good consultation between you. I think it was a good report from Torca this morning at our committee, and I thank them for coming out and presenting that information to us. And let's start moving forward, and let's start the consultation. I think that's what they really want to see and get on the ground with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Towner.
I as well am in total support with proceeding as outlined in this report. Excuse me. And as enthusiastic as I am with the final phase of this project, I'm also very pleased to read that pedestrian usage in those trails is going to be a key consideration, and those areas will be left as is. I know that the Riverview Forest and the Mundy Park are very popular for pedestrians and dog walkers, so I was really happy to read that. But I'm also very pleased that staff will be consulting with Torca. I talked about this earlier today in the council and committee meeting, but I want to say again that I've been very fortunate that my children attend a school in that neighborhood and have been lucky enough to be part of the spring bike club and make their way from the school to the Riverview Forest and Mundy Park. And Ken Porter's in the audience today. He's a very dedicated director with Torca, and that's a highlight of the kids' school year. and the passion and the confidence they gain and the education they get from the skills and the forest and all that is, we all win when kids are in the forest and utilizing it that way. And I think with the improved trails coming to this end of Coquitlam, I'm a huge advocate for having a wide variety of activities for youth and young people and all residents. And so I'm really excited about this. I've also attended some of the Torca's trail maintenance, cleanup, repair events, and it's just amazing to see. So their passion and everything, I'm really happy that staff will be consulting with Torca. And North Coquitlam has so many trails and off-road cycling options. It's just great to see that there's some coming to the other end of Coquitlam, and I look forward to hearing from what the public has to say and what the Torca folks have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none other, and there were no amendments. Motions on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 14 concerns the integrated watershed management planning. It's a status update. Staff recommendation that Council adopt the final report of the Austin-Rochester Integrated Watershed Management Plan, dated May 2015. The staff be directed to post the draft Mundy Creek IWMP dated May 2015 on the city's website for public review and feedback, and the staff be authorized to enter into a joint study with Metro Vancouver in order to compare treatment options for single-family lot residential runoff.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, second by Councillor Zerillo. Councillor Abbas.
Thank you very much. Good report by staff. I just got a few comments here. It comes under, on page 2, you're talking about the rainwater management for 300 millimeters of topsoil for areas to absorb rainwater. I just want to let you know that throughout our development in the Northeast, that's not being met at all. Most of the people in most of the developments up there have what they would call almost sand soils. When they put their water on, it just drains through, that they've dug up their properties and brought in soil, because there is almost no, there also has to be a percentage of probably around 20% organic in there. So I think through planning or engineering, who's ever doing the inspecting on these developments, we are presently not getting the developers putting in that 300 millimeters of topsoil on the lots in the developments in the Northeast that are supposed to be there. That falls on our responsibility to do this. We're also not getting the same amount of quality organic matter within our boulevards and the problems with our boulevards in those areas for groundwater infiltration. So the other thing comes down to talking about single-family runoff in a study with North Vancouver, and I just got a couple comments. When you're talking about controlling single-family, are you talking about looking back at having rock pits on every single-family lot when you're talking in Old Coquitlam?
Through your worship, we're looking at a number of options. It could be rock pits. It could be other features in the boulevard that would kind of manage kind of on-site rainwater management. And what we're really looking at, we're looking at whether we can move some of the rainwater management from large water quality ponds, what I'll call kind of community facilities that take up a lot of land, take up developable land, and try to move it to the site level, and work to see what those options look like.
Okay, in the Northeast, we had our issues about rock pits not putting them because of their inability to work in the different soil conditions and the lot space, the different parts of taking it up. I also have concerns about the standards that we use for swales. If you look in Burke Mountain on David Avenue and different streets where we have the dip in the swales, our maintenance costs are through the roof because we can't use a lawnmower to cut the grass there. They have to go in there. It doesn't get maintained. I think Councillor Reid has talked about the poor quality or look because it's hard and costly to maintain. When you're on slopes, that swale doesn't work because the water is just going down there. So I think, the proper amount of soil within the boulevard, leveling it off, good quality organic soil for good drainage through into the groundwater is a better way to go. I just have some concerns with what we've been doing in there. And I think Councillor Hodge would agree with the type of swales around. There's on Marguerite, on David, and I can keep going on, that are also hazards for people getting out. Now, we did change some of the guidelines in future areas. I think we need to go back and upgrade some of those existing areas we put those in. But I'm looking forward to see what the report is, but I just want to highlight especially about the lack of soil that's going in at present on single-family homes and in the boulevards, and there are almost no organic content. There should be a 20% at least organic for the planting and growth in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. No other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 15, pertains to the 2015 council meeting schedule. These are proposed amendments. Staff recommendations that council approve the following amendments to the current 2015 council meeting schedule. The addition of council and committee meetings on those Mondays which feature a public hearing, and 2, the rescheduling of the October 21st Strategic Priority Standing Committee meeting to October 8th.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Towner. So we need more meetings. All in favor? Opposed? Surprisingly enough, no one's opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
More meetings it is. Item 16 is the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief for July 31st. Staff recommendations that council receive for information, the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief, and our Metro Vancouver Board representatives are here to respond to any questions.
Moved.
Receipt is moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Your Worship, that's the last formal item on this agenda.
Adjournment is moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Asmussen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Happy International Literacy Day, and we'll move to question period following council protocol. Of all of the remaining people in the audience, do any of them have questions for council on tonight's agenda? You don't have any? Anything at all? No? Thank you all for coming.
Good night.